Welcome to No Question About That. This is the Midweek Pod with me, Ed, and him, Adam. How's it going, Adam?
The Misery Pod. I'm here, Ed. That's how I would describe myself. I am here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't think this is the Misery Pod. I mean, it used to be, because we'd have to talk on a Thursday night after United had been spanked by,
Grimsby.
Fucking nobody in the Europa League. Oh, now it's Grimsby. Yeah, now we have nothing to talk about during the week. Well, except we kind of do, because there's always news with United. So, all right, on the menu today, we're going to talk about the fallout from United's latest defeat at Brentford, what it means. The sense I get, and we can get into this, is that it's pushed quite a lot of people over the edge. This one certainly had some red flags going off in my mind, the approach, the way we lost, and so on. We'll talk a little bit about the Champions League and what's going on there that we're missing out, but we can live vicariously through ex-United players who are on loan at other clubs, some of whom are doing very well. We'll talk a little bit about the interim manager situation, Amorim, so on. There's some reports that United are looking into this. I mean, I cannot believe for a moment that they are not. I mean, it's just good. It's just good planning. You always have to do that. And then we'll talk about Sunderland at the weekend. All right, your take on defeat at Brentford and the now fairly standard hysterical reaction in both social and traditional media. Much of it warranted.
All right, deep breaths. Just tell myself to stay calm.
Podcast listeners can't tell, but I've got myself a Sam Allardyce-sized glass of wine here to get through this.
Sobriety on a Thursday afternoon just means it's an energy drink for me.
Very good.
But look...
Which energy drink is that? Shall we get this as an advertiser now?
Yeah, this is V. This is me fave. I don't know that Red Bull shit. I don't support Jurgen Klopp, so...
exactly, yeah.
Look, the Brentford game was a disaster. It was probably confirmation for a lot of people, like you said, who are on the brink. And I feel like I was sort of one of them. It's caused a lot of reflection for me in how I've probably supported and defended him. I've wondered, how much have I got wrong here? Was my faith misplaced? Was there too much, I don't know, rope given? But also, like, how much did you balance last season with this season? But for me, the problem that I've the conclusion that I've come to is that the things from last season that you and I talked about, the issues from midfield progression, the issues with the wing backs or full backs and having like six defenders, including a defensive midfielder on the pitch, and what that left in attack, all those problems we're still seeing this season. And you posted a good tweet explaining the context of the XG, Sesko's multiple chances, the penalties, not include like the open play XG and the shot per shot XG were extremely low. And when you contextualize everything and when you try to draw a conclusion, ultimately it's that there's nothing to cling to. There's no run of form. There's no statement performance. There's nothing that gives us any cause for belief besides blind faith and blind loyalty. And that doesn't serve anyone. And so I feel like that's sort of like what I've been doing, trying to see the optimistic side of what can be instead of maybe what is. And what is a really disastrous moment for the football club where I'm questioning where Ruben Amorim fits into the leadership's vision. So, where does he fit in their overall scheme? Like the philosophy of the club. I understand the signings were bought not for the manager, but for the philosophy. But where did Amorim fit into that when he was chosen? I'm wondering how much of a plan was in place when Omar Barada, I guess you could say, overrode the rest of the footballing structure to make that decision and go pursue him and go to Lisbon and negotiate a deal. So I have probably bigger picture questions beyond the next manager in terms of the decision-making and the reasoning behind that and what that means for the future of look, we've got the footballing structure now. I just need to understand a little bit more about it. Where do you stand?
Yeah. Well, look, I think there's a simple answer to that. Remember when Sir Jim came in and said, hey, we're going to support the manager with a structure? One, tick, done that. Yeah, made some mistakes with Ashworth, whatever, recorrected. They've put almost everything in place except for the analytics thing still a little bit behind, right? So there's that one. Then he said, we'll have a philosophy. The philosophy will guide the manager. They chucked that out the window. They set it on fire. They threw it in the bin when they went and got Ruben Amorim, because there's absolutely no way you're telling me that Ineos Group Sport Division decided with Dave Brailsford as their head that they were going to go for a 3-4-3 manager with a 3-4-3 fairly specific formation and even more specific philosophy / system set of rules by which you play, which means effectively you need 18 or 19 very specific system players in order to get the most out of your team, right? There's no way they had decided that before they appointed Ruben Amorim. They are fitting that back to front into Ruben Amorim, and it's part of the reason why we are on the point of crisis now. I mean, I think well, you started off pointing out the XG. That became a debate, at least in social media circles, but in some other stuff, because there was clearly, I think, from the United end trying to push this as we are leading the league in XG.
The underlying metrics are very solid, Ed.
Oh, yeah. That's apparently what Sir Jim and Ruben talked about in their famous tete-a-tete a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. But, I mean, the truth is, like, when you look at the underlying metrics or even the headline metrics, it's like eating the salmon at a buffet, right? Shit is going to come out of both ends afterwards, right? And we are just there. We have the fourth worst XG against in the league. It was the worst, actually, before last weekend. We improved our position, and we're about mid-table for post-shot expected goals again. Expected goals, right? So, sorry, let's say that again. We're about mid-table for non-penalty expected goals per shot, right? That is to say, how efficient are you? And it's the model, right? He's embraced a little bit more chaos ball. We're going a bit direct. He wants to go direct, win second balls, rely on the quality of the new forwards we've got in order to finish those. Now, at the moment, we are not providing enough good chances that the quality of those forwards comes into play. And that would appear very much to be a systemic issue, not about suspensions, not about injuries, not about tiredness or anything like that. This is just the way he's decided to play, and he's doubled down on it almost with this new slightly direct approach, very direct some might say. We look at the metrics, and so here we are, and this is the stuff that's got me with a lot of red flags. And it's not. I wrote. I find myself. I can have more nuance in a podcast, but I'm saying this live, right? The thought's got to come out of my head into my mouth and be articulated in some kind of sensible fashion, and sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. There's no context on Twitter. There's no point having this debate on Twitter effectively. But when I write, I can kind of structure it in a way that I'm thinking about what I actually want to say. And I kind of come to the conclusion that there's really no supporting evidence for Ruben other than there's something about him, there's some kind of aura about him. But even that is eroding because he says a lot of stupid stuff about his own players all of the time, even after I wrote that piece. And then I come to the piece that, and I'll stop here, that I was talking about with Dom at the weekend, which is basically, do I believe that firing him now would actually progress United? That bit I'm not sure about, because I'm not sure you could actually put your finger on a coach right now that would be the right one. Summer 2026 after the World Cup, there's going to be a lot of coaches available. And if I was United, I'd be thinking about that, right? Either struggling through to then or getting an interim. We'll come on to that in a bit. But anyway, long way of saying I'm not quite on the, fire Ruben out of a cannon yet, but there's alarms all over the place.
Yeah, I think there's this thing where you have to, on social media at least, define yourself as an Amorim outer or an Amorim inner. And I have been very conscious not to do that. I can make a point and be like, I have nothing to stand behind as far as supporting Ruben, because there is nothing. There's really nothing unless you believe that it's entirely the squad or the lack of midfield options, or if you want to talk about, how Wayne Rooney had the rant that was ultimately just cliches and empty platitudes, which I actually appreciated from a passion perspective because he was embodying the fan response.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't.
He sounded like a fan, and it was a good fan rant. Yeah.
Yeah, because you could see the hurt, and I think that gave people, it resonated and gave people something to relate to. Mm-hmm. But the club's problems are bigger. So, we can talk about sacking, and I can completely understand the rationale. And I'd support the decision if they made it, not knowing what's next, of course, the summer management options and things like that, which we'll get to. But the problems are still bigger than that. The club still clearly has a culture issue. We can't entirely be convinced that they're driving elite performance, but for me, it's so much more. So the squad rebuild has still got to be finished. The club leadership still has a problem. The pathway to the first team for young players is clearly a problem. I don't know why there's 2 keepers on the bench when you could easily have an academy player getting just match day experience, just valuable match day experience, and maybe minutes in the right scenario, when there clearly are prospects there. And then maybe you don't want to interrupt their pathway, but I don't really see the harm in involving them in that, when I always thought amidst this rebuild, particularly without European football, that those young players would be your depth. Like when we saw Tyler Frederickson last season, that was sort of the point for me where I was like, well, these are your players to do that. But we haven't seen anyone be promoted yet just for the sake of being seen. And I'm really frustrated because I like you, I don't see what's next. I don't like the idea of appointing a new coach now. I'm absolutely down the pathway of an interim, and I'm not sure whether that's what you want to get into next, but that's where I see it. That's interim to the summer, and I think ideally there's a couple of managers I've got my eye on for then.
Oh, I have a number one name. We'll get to that in a bit. I mean, I just want to...
Yeah, I didn't want to go too far down the path.
Yeah, I think all of that is right. I'm just incredibly frustrated and disappointed that we went for the next best coach who we felt... I think this is the rationale. The next best coach who's going to become the next Pep or Klopp or pick your manager, who's a great coach. And
Beat City to a punch.
Yeah, and he was... Well, exactly. And who knows, they may well have done the same thing, right, with Hugo Viana there as director of football. I mean, yeah. Or maybe it was disinfo, as City may have done a few times with us, getting players ahead of them over the years. But the next great coach, young, charismatic, speaks well, has the aura to be a Manchester United manager. Don't discount that. Really important, right? You know, if David Moyes had aura, he might have got a bit more time. But, you know, you never know. Had interesting ideas, had a brilliant record with Sporting, took them from nowhere, a club in total crisis, financial problems all over the place, fans invading the training ground and loads of players leaving on free contracts. You know, couldn't have been in a worse place. And he took them to 2 titles, a couple of cups, beat City in the Champions League. He felt like the next thing. The problem was, and lots of smart analysts said this, and I've repeated this point about Liverpool a few times now, but the problem was we didn't, as fans, quite know how dogmatic and how specific the set of players, how dogmatic he is as a manager and how specific the set of players he wanted, to the point that really the only concession he's made to his system is to take his best player, take him out of the position in which he got 184 goals and assists for the club and stick him into central midfield where he can't perform anywhere near like the levels we want. And I just find this kind of behaviour bizarre, and there must have been conversations behind the scenes. There must, like Jason Wilcox must have been talking to Amorim, because good directors of football know ball, right? They do. They have, some of them have big analytics teams. They have their own analysts that analyse. That's their job, right? Is the manager performing or not? It's not a gut. It shouldn't be game to game. It should be looking at all that data, the metrics, against the plan.
Well, I also have concerns about the size of the coaching team and the quality of the coaching team that's been assembled. Yeah. I mean, we made fun of, not we, but people made fun of the setup around Ole Gunnar Solskjaer with Carrick and McKenna. That proved to be really good. Having that support with them and McPherson, like that mattered. Just having those, and now you've got coaches that don't all even have their full coaching badges, who hadn't managed outside of the first team analyst, hadn't managed or coached outside of Portugal. He'd been at Liverpool and Arsenal. They're just you didn't have that experience. And I wonder how much of that a consideration is in appointing an interim who will need to bring in their own people. Like, if it's like a Carrick, you're not going to want to take Fletcher out of the under-18s when he's just getting set up there, doing a really good job with that group of players. You don't want to disrupt that. It's just, it's so frustrating. Just wondering what the decision-making is. And you come back to Bruno Fernandes. It's amazing when you need such specific players for your system. I can understand some of the rationale that you want a player who is box-to-box, has attacking qualities in one of those central midfield roles, but it doesn't work unless you have the partner to match.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand dropping him there, provided you have your player who can be like two players at once defensively in that role next to him. But I can't rationalize it otherwise. And it just feels like it's symptomatic of the problems that the system has. So you're not platforming the strengths of your players. So I can't understand a lot of it. Like, I thought Benjamin Sesko was really good on the weekend, but that was an exception to the rule for those striker performances, because more often than not, that striker seems really isolated, not being brought into the play by his teammates, not because of their own fault, but because of how they're asked to play. So it's asking him to feed on scraps. So I am baffled by the tactical decisions now, because, like you said, it's just not entirely what we expected. I mean, we couldn't be expected to know everything. He had been described as more like Mourinho than Pep, and that sort of makes sense now in certain elements of his stubbornness. But I am just, at some things, I just feel exasperated talking about it, because I'm so frustrated, because it seems like some of the solutions should be simple, right? Because for example, I'm not going to go over it heaps because we know it's never going to happen, but these players actually fit better in a 4 at the back system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely not going to do that. But even the amount of players that have to play significantly out of position or even partially out of position, like you cannot tell me that Matthias de Ligt or Harry Maguire, who seem to share duties in the wide centre-back position at the weekend, different phases of play, are comfortable in those wide centre places. They just are not, right? That, for me, they are out of position. And then you can count the number. And sometimes it's 6 or 7 players in a team as a result. And I don't think there's any team on the planet that would perform to their max when that happens. You're talking about coaching stuff. I mean, I agree. Like, it's the total lack of experience in the Premier League amongst that large coaching group, the lack of experience, full stop, with some of them. There's some of them in their 20s, right? One of them, the set-piece coach. The goalkeeper coach, who is Barcelona's new left winger, I think, is never played in this league either. Would someone who understood the Premier League would have got to grips with Onana and Bayindir better, quicker? Who knows? I don't know. But it feels like we have seen that film, and we kind of know how it ends, quite a lot with United over the last 10 years. I thought this might be different this time. In fact, I thought it would be much more top-down, that we, the club, have this football executive structure and support teams around a head coach, and the head coach may or may not get all the things he wants, but he is one person, one employee, and we like to have continuity. The whole point about director of football is you have continuity, both in the playing style that we were supposedly going to get, coaching, analytics, data, recruitment, and the playing squad, right? And this is not going to be the case, because if Ruben gets fired, 6 coaches are going to go with him, and we're going to have to bring another 6 in. That's a year after, 18 months after we added 4 new coaches for Ten Hag for his second season, and then fired all of those too. I mean, the madness of the churn and the lack of continuity when we said we would do that is quite stark, right? And if Ruben does go this season, and from this point right now it seems very likely, then we really should evaluate exactly how we think about this as a club. I mean, it doesn't seem like good strategy to me. Of course, right? You go to any Fortune 100 company, giant companies or whatever, and if the CEO changes, a whole bunch of the executive change happens as well. But there's institutional knowledge there, right? We're a 1,000-person company, or 750 now, right? But really, the core football part is 25 to 30 players and about 10 coaches, right? 15 if you include some of the age groups. It's quite small, right? And you've just changed out 30% of that. Hell of a risk, and we may be paying the price now.
Well, not only that, I mean, you talked about how they ripped up the plan that they'd sort of outlined to us in the briefs and the stories that we'd gotten post the ownership buy-in. And one of the things about that stood out for me, reflecting on it now, is that the youth teams don't follow the same system, and that's clear lack of continuity. So how do you transition players into the first team if they're not executing the same roles and principles in the youth setup? And like, if the youth setup is going better, it sort of speaks to the problems the first team is having because they are doing different things, and that just doesn't work. And so one of the concerns with that is that, Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, whether they like it or not, particularly in Wilcox's case, because the Amorim decision doesn't seem his as much as it is Barada's, is that they're inevitably attached to that decision. So Amorim's failure is their failure. And the worry that I have, and when you compare it to, say, Erik ten Hag at Bayer Leverkusen, is that they are hesitant to make a decision because of how it reflects on them. And that is also a huge cause for concern because those are decisions not made with the club's interest at heart. And so Carl Anker said it best on Talk of the Devils, and I can't remember the exact quote. I think it's the longer you stay on the train, the more expensive the journey to get back. And is that not the sort of the pathway we're potentially on now? So how costly is it to wait? Because I don't think about the short-term costs. Like, you can talk to me about the 12 million or the rumoured 4 million in a month's time. But the concern for me is the league places, £2.5 million per, the lack of European football, which can be anywhere up to £100 million at a minimum. So these are the concerns that I have with a season that is moving towards being unsalvageable, and we're at the start of October with not that many league games being played, really, which is part of the argument that the Amorim inners have, is that to give him more time. But how much more time is, again, beyond the point of no return.
Yeah, innies and outies. Severance season 3 really sucks.
Things, things I just never wanted to say that much in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, sorry, plug my Substack again, but this week's, because I was thinking about this, right? When is the right time to fire a coach? And I looked back through all of them, and I kind of think they went late on all of them. I mean, famously with Moyes, they waited until United were mathematically out the Champions League places. They fired him the next day. They did wait with Van Gaal until at least he lifted the trophy. Then they fired him in the dressing room, effectively. It was the next morning, but I think we all knew, right? They fired him by text, basically. And they waited way too long with Mourinho. It was cancerous well before he got fired. Ollie's the only one that I have my doubts about there because I think he made a major decision, got it wrong, in which he did not say no to Ronaldo, right?
Yep.
Now, I made the argument from a moral standpoint, but from a football standpoint, it was clearly incredibly disruptive for his team. And I think he should have said no to that one, and he could well have lasted much longer as a result. So that's the only one, really. Ten Hag, clearly, obviously, they waited way too long. I mean, utter madness, giving him a new contract, which was a deeply emotional decision, not based on the kind of logic that they said they would use, affecting in other words, but
is it the only
structure
time...
is about logic. So I think we make the decision too late all of the time as a club, and we wait until it's almost as if the PR piece it overrides the embarrassment, or the PR piece overrides the logic of a football decision. I think Dom might have said it the other day on one of the other pods, or one of our many co-hosts. Sorry, apologies, lads. Said, well, actually, maybe we just wait. Actually, maybe the best decision is just to fire now, get the poison out, and we don't fire enough. Because if you have that structure in place, where there is the continuity, the head coach matters a whole lot less than Ferguson used to. He said head coach is the most important person at the club. It shouldn't be. Just shouldn't be.
How much are we still attached to that final speech that he made where he said you back your manager, and how much do fans still resonate with that message now to the point that they will, there's an army of people who will, when I've spoken against it, people think I've sort of flip-flopped, and it's like I'm sort of changing my thinking, to wonder, is the manager not as important as we put faith in because of what Sir Alex meant to us and to the club? Because he was everything. He had control over everything, to the point where in the football structure we have now, that head coach should actually be pretty replaceable if your philosophy and vision is strong and backed up by fluid decision-making top to bottom. Yep. So something you were saying earlier was making me think, when I think about, all of us probably are interested in other sports, and what you see in other sports, particularly in American sports franchises, for example, the best teams have fluid decision-making from top to bottom where they all understand what they're driving towards. Can you honestly say that Manchester United do that at any level? And if you look across the other side of the north of England at Liverpool, they function the exact way that Manchester United should as a big club, and it makes it really hard to look at them and what they've done this summer in the transfer market and see, well, you look at that, that's what we should have been able to do if we'd got half the things right over the last decade instead of the majority of the things wrong. So
I think you're absolutely right on that Ferguson speech resonates. I actually think he goes wider than that, and this is probably get some pelters on socials for this kind of thing. I think if you look at the history of this club, great club, magnificent institution, we know its global reach and the draw it has with sponsors and all of that kind of stuff, fantastic institution. But our two major blocks of successful times in our nearly 150 years of history have been under two kings, Busby and Ferguson. And they made themselves kings by being brilliant, right? But we are deeply attached to that model as a fan base and, as I'd suggest, as a club, right?
Core beliefs.
We've given Ruben veto power over everything. Positions, who gets sold, who gets bought, mainly. I mean, there is the argument that Wilcox
it wasn't supposed to be
him
that
on a
way.
midfielder. Yeah. No, exactly. It wasn't. We were not supposed to have another king. We were supposed to have said, after 12 years of failure post-Ferguson, you know what, we need to move away from this, and it's better to have a committee, that's not the right word, deep institutional knowledge on the things you're trying to do and drive towards in each of the functional roles. Coaching's one of them, but so's data, so's analytics, so's medical, so's transfer policy, so's negotiation, so's the commercial stuff, right? We have specialists in all of these areas, except for the coach who is the king, and he rules over all that he sees. It's not the modern way, but we seem deeply rooted to it.
Well, yeah, it's like they're beyond reproach, then that's part of the problem is when you do question it. And I've always been on the other side as well. I feel like I'm learning from some of the mistakes I've made with stances that I've had. It's that, there are things with the manager that we need to start questioning because the decision-making is just not what we were sold on, or not. Well, we thought things were going to change, but things are very much the same in that same aspect of the veto power. Like the biggest thing about Ten Hag's reign is the veto power he had with transfers. So, Anana over another preferred target, Anthony over another preferred target. It was just those sorts of signings that were so damning. And we're not necessarily making the same problems with signings now, but the things that were promised and the structure that we've put in place, there hasn't been the same follow through. They're still sort of making the same mistakes because we do, again, it's like we have to divorce just a little bit from the past. And it's hard because we have this, we're Manchester United, we're different, but maybe, and it's hard to accept and hard to say, maybe there has to be a little bit more progressive forward thinking, and that it's like you said, do we pull the trigger now on the coach? Because he is not as essential as he is supposed to be if we are getting things as right as they should be. Does that make sense?
No, it does. But there's a valid question mark about, have we got things right under the new regime? Some stuff. I mean, I think they've mostly done a good job in the transfer market relative to past periods. Duarte is clearly a mistake, I think. He'll do well somewhere else, but this is not the league or the club for him. I think Dorgu, I don't know. Jury's out there. He's very young.
Hung out to dry a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely got time. He shouldn't be in a system where he's on the ball quite as much as he is in very dangerous areas. And he's
in the Marcus Rashford spot, in a way.
Yeah, well, he is. He's Marcus Rashford's replacement effectively. I mean, if you don't, we're still in this mind actually. Just a little aside of thinking about replacements in direct formation. Like Dorgu's role in the team is the same one that Rashford had, more under Ten Hag than under Amorim. The Cunha has replaced Bruno. That's why Bruno is now deeper. Ahmad and Bumo, kind of same profile, really. But anyway, I have a lot of reasons to doubt that the decision making has really got to the point that we're making consistently good decisions at this club. And it's a small group of people, right? And I don't know if Ratcliffe is deeply involved, more deeply involved than he should be at this stage, but it's quite a tight knit of leadership. So we've got Wilcox, Barada, Barada at the top, and then you've got Wilcox and his technical team. You've got Vivell and recruitment. You've got negotiations. It's a small, and then there's the coaches and the health and analytics and blah 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 blah, and all of that kind of stuff. Right? It's quite a tight knit group. You should be able to, unless you're in a very political environment, make decisions quite quickly. When you're in a very political environment, everyone looks upstairs to the CEO, and everyone knows that Omar Barada is not the real CEO. That is Jim Ratcliffe, and so they'll all be looking up to him. I don't know about the political environment at United particularly. It's new, so it shouldn't be too political, really. But, anyway, tight group, should be able to be flexible, should be able to get to critical thinking quite quickly. Something is broken down there. And this decision over Amorim stay or go will give us, in a few months' time, a very good idea about how they make decisions at this club.
Yeah, I mean, when Dan Ashworth went, it was sort of sold as that, well, we know now that there was obviously disagreements and Ratcliffe didn't resonate and bond with Ashworth the way that he might have hoped. And it was sold as there was a bit of overlap in duties. So things were going to become a bit more clear with Vivell, Wilcox and Barada as like a trio. But yeah, I'm wondering now if that's not quite working. Well, certainly not working the way it's supposed to. I think the trick is as well, because the team is performing so poorly, it doesn't matter what they're getting right. So, if they're getting the transfers right, if they're getting youth recruitment right, it doesn't really matter if the manager and the decision-making attached to him and the power that he's given is not working. Because ultimately, all that fans care about right now and how dire the situation is, this existential crisis that we're sort of living, is that results are all that matter. Like even Chelsea, if you cut out the first half, it was a really poor second half. And so they won, but they won by the skin of their teeth. And I know they shut down the second half and ground out a result, but they should have really, we aren't seeing, and sorry to jump back into the performance aspect, but they haven't managed to convince us when it's 11v11 and they aren't getting, things of fortune going their way with the stupidity of Robert Sanchez, that they can convince man to man.
Yeah. I think I've gone past it's 6 games into the season and let's judge him after a bit more time, because nothing's actually changed, really. Yeah. So if there'd been some real fundamental changes, apart from the long ball stuff, but if there'd been some fundamental system changes, I might have been minded to go, let's just judge him after a bit longer now. It is basically 49 games that we get to judge him on. It's obviously a horrendous record on 49 games, and I think we can safely say now that Amorim's view of his squad was that you just swap out 3 players and we'll get to where we needed, right? Now he's changed, right? So if you look back at the interview he just did with TNT, why is he on again getting interviewed for the 900th time?
Broadcasters know it prints money,
Yeah, I mean, they don't even...
Not even no reason to be on TNT.
Yeah, there's no reason. But he said he called out Cunha and Bumo as having the right kind of mentality. He said Cunha, you can see he's frustrated, but that's because he's just such a winner and such a fighter. And then he called out others, not by name, fortunately, because he'd be in a lot of trouble if he did, for not having this winning mentality and heads going down when they lose. And we kind of, I guess we know that, right? But I was just like, are you disassociating yourself from motivation of your squad here? Are you saying there's nothing to do with you and it's all about them? Because That is Mourinho-esque levels of toxicity. I did not like that interview at all. And quite a few this season I haven't liked. I haven't liked his comments about individual players because it's almost always negative. I can't see how that's a winning strategy. If your manager comes to you and says, Adam, you're just not cut out for this. You don't have the right mentality. I want a top performance from you this week. Where's it going to go? You know?
Yeah, I don't think throwing players under the bus is a modern man management concept. I just don't think players in 2025 respond to that. I know employees certainly don't. So why should players? They're employees in their own right. I agree with you. I think his press conferences and his media work this season, particularly with less press conferences where he has more time to clarify things that he said, because they sometimes can be misunderstood as the second language thing. Mm-hmm. But I don't like how he's carried himself, because I think it's not giving the fans what they want. We might agree about the players, but coming from him, it's a completely different thing, because how do the players see that? So how are you going to get the players fighting for you unconditionally? Because I think at the moment the performance is very conditional. And how much that's more of an indictment on his ability to motivate them, particularly in second halves where they've come out really poorly. That's been a symptomatic of his entire tenure as well. You know, you can get them coming out for 15 minutes at the start, but if they don't fire and they fall behind, sorry to say, but they're fucked. And
well, absolutely. And at the risk of becoming Paul Scholes here and saying, I don't like the body language. I don't like the body language either of Ruben Amorim. Looking at his shoes, head in hands for extended periods of time, not looking at the penalties, a bit weird. Yeah, it doesn't strike me as for someone who has so much charisma and speaks so well, he doesn't strike me as having the right kind of executive aura to him that people like. Yeah. I mean, we've probably all worked with people like this. I know I have, rarely, but occasionally worked with people who I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure if I follow your logic or why you made this decision, but yeah. We'll go for it. It's that Amazon thing of you argue it out, and when the decision is made, you're all in the boat. And I'm not sure that I'm seeing that. And it's not I think the players have thrown him under the bus or they're down tools or anything like that. I just, there's something a bit off with him in the way he's doing his media work and his touchline behaviour. Stress, pressure, criticism getting to him. He knows he's doing a bad job. All of that.
I think inevitably the job has broken him. Like if you had to summarise it, I'd say it's broken him. I think he's quite defeatist, and I think he's been defeatist ultimately probably since the Grimsby game. I feel like that was maybe when he knew that his time was now ticking. And I don't like the body language. I don't think fans respond to it. Fans respond to a leader, like not an authoritarian, a leader, someone who's, willing to take pelters for his team. And he doesn't do that. So he'll pass the buck. He'll say it's not the system. People and I'm sick of the talk about the formation versus the system. Like Glasner plays 3 at the back. It's not the same as playing 3 at the back under Amorim. It is so different. I can't hear it anymore. But it's so frustrating to see that, because after games, sometimes we just want some accountability. And I don't feel like we've ever really got that. And so it's like you're saying, the disassociation. Can he not see? Is he too stubborn to see because he's so driven in his vision? There's no way that he can back down now. Like to back down to save his job, I just don't think he's willing to do that. So where are we? What's the what alternative is there?
Yeah. There are we hobble on until it becomes too much for the executives to bear is what I think will happen. How long that is, I don't have much faith that he's going to turn it around. It would be a remarkable performance if he did. I'd love to be proved wrong and somehow it all clicks. Love to, and everyone can look back at these pods and go, hey, you idiots.
You want them to age terribly.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Of course. But I think that's probably unlikely, and that we'll end up moving on to some kind of interim and look for a new manager in the summer. That would seem very likely at 50 games in, basically, and the results being as horrendous as they are. But yeah, we'll get more information in time. I mean, it might come quite quickly if we lose to Sunderland at the weekend. The pressure is just going to be so immense.
Do you think they're waiting for the payout to lower after a year? Do you think there's substance
they might
to
well
that?
do. I mean, and you can kind of understand why they might do that. I mean, Although if it really is 12 million to 4 million, so an £8 million saving, that's 3 places in the Premier League, basically. And you could definitely lose 3 places by losing all your games in October. Although there aren't that many games, I suppose, with the international break and all that. All right, well, we should probably move on to other stuff because we'll definitely have another chance to talk about this one because Sunderland could well be quite difficult. The Champions League was on this week just to show us what we're missing. Did you enjoy any of it? Notable for reasons of some kind that Marcus Rashford had another very good performance for Barcelona, gotten a very fine assist as well for one of their goals. Rasmus Højlund scored from a through ball. Remember when we were talking about him fighting with the centre-backs all the time and he wasn't...
he was running in space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scored a nice header too.
Yeah, he's had a good start. 3 goals in his first 5 games for Napoli. Marcus Rashford, I think, had something like 7 goal involvements in the last 6 games. He had a slow start to the season. I'd say he wasn't immediately put in the side, but he's pretty regular now. And he's got much more... He's got just the role that suits him, right? He's running at defenders in space. He is not really wide on the touchline. He doesn't have to do a lot of tracking back, given Barcelona's system. And it's a kind of understandably restricted role and probably less pressure on him. I know there's loads of pressure at Barcelona, but he's not the hometown kid,
not the saviour
at all. He's someone on loan, so he seems to be thriving there. Scott McTominay had a more difficult start to the season after MVP in Serie A and 18th place in the Golden Ball award. Golden Ball?
Ballon d'Or.
Yeah. Golden Ball. There you go. He's been shifted out to the left wing by Conte to make room for Kevin De Bruyne this season. So it's a bit more difficult start. Anyway, what do you think of the Champions League stuff this week? Are you missing it? It feels weird without United in it. Maybe it doesn't anymore because we're barely ever in it.
Yeah, I mean, touching on the United aspect again, it really makes me realise what we're missing out on the Champions League nights, like right before the games start. Not only that, it's when you watch the Premier League this season as well, you see a clear opportunity where there aren't a ton of elite teams. There are great teams and there are good teams. Like it's a really strong division overall. And it's really hard to pick who even be relegated. But there's an opportunity for teams to surge up the table, but United are too incompetent to take it. But coming back to the Champions League, it really does make me miss it. I loved the Liverpool loss yesterday. That was definitely the highlight of that match day.
A bit of that one, yeah.
And I never thought I'd appreciate Eric Dyer as much as I would appreciate him today. Enjoyed Erling Haaland getting his Man of the Match award and his face when he got that, and Bernardo Silva's petty press conference afterwards. But it creates an interesting discussion just with how the players are thriving outside of Manchester United. But there are a multitude of reasons. So one, the environment at United is a pressure cooker unlike any other outside of Real Madrid and Barcelona. Like you said, Marcus Rashford's not expected to be the saviour there. So while there is immense pressure on him, there's got to be a freedom of what was expected of him at Manchester United, where he just had to star. He had to be the best player all the time. And now he's just the cog in the machine. Like you said, he is on loan, but he's playing alongside Robert Lewandowski, Lamine Yamal, and all of a sudden, a bit less pressure on you when you've got them to bail you out instead of Wout Weghorst and Anthony. So it's a little bit different. Rasmus Højlund, another player thriving in a slower league. And I don't even think, when you look at the Champions League, it's a lot easier for those teams because they don't have demanding league fixtures on the weekend. Particularly in Spain and France, not so much in Italy, maybe, but
or
Germany,
in Italy,
yeah, but it's not the same. The Premier League, one of the reasons it's so tough for English teams in the Champions League is because you can't rotate in the Premier League, and then you sometimes have to rotate in the Champions League because of the demands of England, and the prize money on offer makes clubs prioritise a little bit differently. But I find Champions League days tough in that aspect, particularly the weeks have never felt longer. It's just a civil war between the fans. Just depends what side you're on. If you stay in the middle, jump to one side, it's not fun. Today was one of those days where there wasn't too much bad news, except once the Champions League was played, and it's like, oh, what have we done? But at the same time, United have an accountability because players aren't put in a position to thrive. Like, eventually Marcus Rashford's quality was overawed by an environment that did not support him, and he did not always platform himself the best either.
For sure.
But Bruno Fernandes is another good example. Eventually that quality gets overridden by the toxicity of the environment, Mm-hmm. Flowers need sun to grow, and United, no sunlight, for a very poor use
none
of
at
a
all.
metaphor.
Yeah, and that's nothing to do with the Manchester weather. But
Yeah.
it's desperately difficult times, for sure. And Champions League, although we've only been in it 4 or 5 times since Fergie left, it's the pinnacle. It's the status of this club clearly has to be in that competition and going deep in that competition. There would be politicians with their heads on spikes if this happened at Real Madrid. And I ain't seen many protests this season. Like, where's the fucking anger? We've almost gone the other way. We're kind of semi-pathetically, and I don't really mean it as pathetic. Just kind of meekly chanting
Defeatist.
Ruben Amorim's name over and over, and kind of hoping it'll get better. And then there is a general sense of defeatism, as you say. All right. Well, are we going to lose again at the weekend? Sunderland, 5th place in the Premier League, come to Old Trafford. They've had a good start to the season, given that they're one of the promoted clubs, and they did a lot of change in the summer and spent some money quite wisely, it would look, after albeit 6 games. There's definitely clubs who've come up and done well for a few games and then been found out after Christmas once everyone's had the chance to see them, who've still gone down. So it could definitely still happen to Sunderland, but a pretty good start. And it's based from what I've seen of them, the bunch of the videos I went and watched and the data I downloaded, on quite a pragmatic approach, right? Which is to say, Regis Labrie has decided that he's not all about his principles. It's going to be about some pretty solid pragmatism. They sit in a mid-block, ultra defensive by any means. They've got a bunch of big guys. They're good at in the air and at set pieces. They don't try and play too pretty out the back. They know what's up with the keeper. He's a good shot stopper. Don't ask him to press bait. He's going to launch it. They bought big guy up front as well, and there's some nous in midfield with Granit Xhaka, and they're just a pragmatic team that I think probably will get enough points this season, and definitely got the tools to cause United some problems at the weekend.
Without doubt, big spending Sunderland. No,
but they spend it wisely,
Yeah.
They've raided the French league. They've got Brian Bobby. They've kind of, it looks like they did some homework on it feels like they were intentional about what they bought.
Very much like a football manager
sometimes.
Summer. I think people really liked their signings because it was like they'd gone and got quality players for quality prices. The thing that worries me is these sorts of teams have constantly caused United grief. United can't break down teams like this. They get out-muscled at set pieces. And these are the sort of games that they've inevitably dropped. And it's hard not to be a little cynical based on experience. There aren't the easy beats of last season down the bottom of the table. And Sunderland aren't down bottom of the table at the minute. And so, I'm really curious, is he going to make any changes? Are we going to see senior players who haven't faced the axe? Are they going to face the axe? Because, Diogo Dalot was really poor last weekend, but we don't have Mazraoui available. There's Ahmed Diallo come back in and play on that right side. I would expect as much in a team that's going to set up the way Sunderland are. But I don't know. I don't know whether he has the capacity to make the changes necessary.
Well, it won't be radical because he never does radical anyway. Every change is like for like, effectively with slightly different profiles of players. But he does that with his substitutions. I mean, it was a shock when at one stage he looked like he might be going to a back 4. It's probably Mason Mount actually at left wing back. It was a bit hard to tell.
Yeah, the substitutions were actually surprising. I've got to give him not credit, but my surprise. Casemiro no doubt has to come back in. Well, not no doubt has to. but he will come
will.
back in. They'll need his presence physically and at set pieces in midfield. It would have been really nice to see Kobe Minu tried as a six, being that he debuted as a six, never played there before and got man of the match against Everton. I would love to see him play. I thought Matthias Cunha, despite the shots that he had last week, I actually thought he looks quite underdone physically. And that's not a surprise off the back of a hamstring injury where he would have been really restricted in training for a few weeks. I'd just like to see a little bit of change. Just, it's not too much to ask for. But that's just like, does he try Luke Shaw at left wing back so that he can spell Patrick Dorgu? Because he doesn't have a lot of reprieves. It's really nice to see Harry Amass doing well on loan. Someone made a good point that despite going to Sheffield
bloody
Wednesday,
chaos at Sheffield Wednesday, but
the squad is really unified and together despite everything. It's sort of something we sort of saw on a really minor scale with what Wayne Rooney went through when he was managing Derby. Sometimes clubs in crisis can bond together. So it's really nice to see how he's doing. I saw the journalist from the Daily Star that covers them, I apologise, I can't remember his name, saying he was already dreading when Amass gets recalled in January. So
it'd been Sheffield Star, it's the local paper.
Yeah.
No, apparently reports of him doing really well. Much. It's good news. I was worried about that one.
Yeah, naturally. Johnny Evans doing a good job as the loan manager.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't know how much he'd actually made the decision to send him there, but we'll see. I mean, Sheffield Wednesday, it could still get more toxic. I mean, obviously, they've got one of the stands that's falling down and hasn't been repaired. Chansiri, the owner, has offers to sell, won't sell it because it's not as much money as he wants. He hasn't paid them several times in a row. They've had a transfer embargo. Half the squad walked out. It's a chaotic place to go. And
it's why you need a regulator.
Yeah, well, for sure, and it's coming in.
That's the perfect example of why you need a regulator. You can't not be paying your players and your employees yet still remain control of your club. It doesn't make sense. It goes against the fundamentals of what football clubs are. They aren't playthings
very much
of rich people. Sorry,
that's right. Yeah, he could inject more capital. He could inject more capital. He could sell the club. He's refusing to do so, and there's nothing that anyone can do about it.
Effectively, and
he is.
It's a real shame.
Yep, as happened at Reading as well. So it's not like there aren't examples of this. So I mean, touch wood that happens. We got a lot of hope for Harry Amass. It just needs to develop a little bit physically. He's still only 18. He's got plenty of time.
Yeah. Shea Lacey looking really promising. Looks like he's on the fast track to the first team, provided he can stay fit. So,
which is a big question with Shea as well.
Yeah, the last 2 years have just been a disaster for him, haven't they?
Yeah. Not uncommon with young players who get injuries as they're growing. Even if it isn't particularly growth related, the body's changing and stuff like that. But he's been very unlucky, and a report today that even JJ may be training with the first team. I mean, he's very bloody young. I don't think.
Oh, did you see that? I saw a photo of him on Twitter, and I was like, it's like a fort. It was like it really reminded me he was 14.
Yeah.
I was like, he's so diminutive still. He just clearly hasn't. He's not even close to growing into his body yet, and it is really exciting. But you do have to temper expectations of being like, got a world class talent, but he's 14 years old, and the Premier League is physically more demanding than it's ever been.
Yes, and we don't know exactly what will happen to his body by the time he stops growing, when whatever time that is, let's just say, for the sake of argument, 18, that's 4 years of key development time in which he could get injuries, not quite look comfortable in his body. There have definitely been examples where players have had to relearn some skills as their body has changed and grown. So, we can get very excited about him, but he's 14. So, let's be realistic. All right, what are we going to see at the weekend then? I don't expect to see too many changes. I think he'd probably go with his preferred three up front. Casemiro will come back in. Fernandes will be in. The question marks are probably mainly about goalkeeper and centre-backs. Does Lenny Yoro come back in? He was playing fantastically well and then got dropped.
Can't understand that one. I think it's another thing that causes outrage, right, where you've got your two best prospects at the club, the future of your defence and your midfield, playing minimum chips off the bench.
No, it doesn't fly, does it? I think this will be a difficult one, not just because Sunderland are having a good start to the season, but they're pragmatic in the right ways that United still struggle with. I don't expect them to go to flat back 10 and be ultra defensive. They do have some weapons. I mean, Simon Dingra, who came from Brighton, the South Coast Barcelona.
Often referred to.
A little bit of a surprise that he went because, a couple of years ago, I think they really had high hopes for him as a really top talent. I guess that Brighton know players better than anyone else, so not quite that, but he's got some pace. Brian Bobby's definitely got pace. As I said, they've got weapons in the air. Granit Xhaka, very canny. He may not be the same physical player he once was. Hasn't been that way for quite a while, but
got a wand of a left foot. He's a dirty player, but he has got a.
He will certainly been looking at John Henderson last week with those balls into the channel over the top as being
Yep.
And he's certainly got the talent to put it in the right place. So
it's the sort of team that bullies us time and again.
Has done for a while. Yeah, I don't think we're as physically meek as we were. I mean, there's a lot of good athletes in the side now, but certainly in that central midfield area, it's the problem, right? Bruno cannot be the number 6 and the number 8 and the number 10. He's never going to be the best defender in the world. And although he runs around a lot, he's not the biggest physically, right? He's not going to win a lot of duels. So that's why he's a number 10.
We can see
number 6.
You can see he's frustrated. It's not helping him either playing there. I think it's... No. Yeah, he was clearly he probably should have been subbed at the weekend to not risk getting a red card. And those are the sort of calls you need a strong manager to make.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Adam. Everyone, you can catch us at patreon.com/NQAT pod if you want our extra show we do each week. I'll also give you access to my Substack because I do charge people to write 5,000 bloody words a week. So sign up to that. You can find Adam on all the socials at Adam Joseph _____. I think that was the right numbers. And you can
bang on.
Everywhere. NQAT pod. We really do appreciate your support and for you listening to our therapy session, getting our frustration out a little bit on mic. Bye now.